All right, welcome back. Apologies to anyone who's on the East Coast for posting this a little bit late. Took me a while to get everything a little bit set up here, but regardless, here we are going to be doing a review of our matches for December 1st. This was a pretty one-sided day, and it was also a pretty busy day. But given with how one-sided most of these series were, I don't anticipate it's going to take me very long to get through all of this. But regardless, same as per usual, I'm going to be starting with my upper division matches in order in which they were played, and then moving down to the lower division, and then also doing those in the order in which they were played. So starting off, of course, no upper division for China until the new year, so we're going to be starting off with Southeast Asia, where we had the debut of T1 versus TNC Predator. And notably, everyone on this board here, this was their first series of the new DPC season. And right out of the gate, T1 looked fantastic. Again, TNC is not a team that is probably expected to do very well this season, or at least this tour. I know a lot of people are actually predicting them bottom two. I don't know if I'm being that harsh on them, but they're definitely not expected to finish top four. They're definitely not expected to go to at least the first major. But T1 just looked fantastic right out of the gate. In the first game, it was pretty much a complete stop for T1. They had zero core deaths in that whole game. I know something I thought that was funny is that T1, their entire draft, they had the Dota Plus Platinum level on everyone on the team. That being the Queen of Pain, Bane, Mars. They had Master Tier Faceless Void on 23 Savage, but they had a Gold Tier Snapfire. So that Snapfire being the only one that isn't that level yet. Not something that's important, but I just thought it was kind of funny when I always find it kind of funny when the team drafts a team or drafts a lineup that is just a complete comfort lineup. Then again, these are pro players. They play a ridiculous amount of pubs, so they're not necessarily even their highest level heroes. So getting back into the actual game here, T1 comes out, stops game one. Game two was still a pretty one-sided game. It was a little bit slower. TNC did put up a little bit more resistance. They had some notable good opportunities throughout that game. There was some clashing in the Roshan pit when T1 was trying to get in there, but regardless, T1 just kind of overpowered them in this game. And this game was another instance of the Wraith King versus Faceless Void matchup that we actually saw quite a bit yesterday, specifically in the Alliance series against Tundra, where one team will pick Faceless Void, the other one picks Wraith King to counter it. And it never really feels like the Wraith King is the counter. Like, it just feels like Faceless Void just kills him twice, and that's pretty much what happened in this series. 23 Savage on his Faceless Void, he just didn't really care if he chronoed the Wraith King. He would just kill him twice. And I do give my MVP to 23 Savage in this series. Especially in that game one, he was insane with his chronos, the amount of heroes that he was able to catch in them, and they were all along the edge. So not only did that mean that he was getting them in incredibly close calls, like he was just really playing to the extreme, but also keeping the enemies on the edge means that it gives more ability to your teammates to actually be able to damage them in the chrono. So I just thought 23 Savage had a fantastic series. Honorable mention to Cuckoo on his Mars and his Timber. Again, in game one as well, he was also hitting a lot of really good arenas. His Timber Saw was quite impressive in game two, but I do give my MVP to 23 Savage. Moving on to the other upper division match that we had in Southeast Asia, we have Motivate Gaming versus Execration. This, again, being another series that prediction-wise was kind of one-sided. Motivate Gaming is predicted to be one of the best teams in this region right now, whereas Execration really kind of lost a lot of the flair that they had in the off-season. They don't have the same roster that they had last season. They don't really have one that looks nearly as good. And yeah, this is, again, just another case of one team stomping another. Motivate Gaming right out of the gate just kind of stomps. Notably, their Wraith King had a 15k net worth at 20 minutes in, which is ridiculous in game one. Their mid Ember Spirit was also owning in that game. Yeah, again, Execration just kind of looked outclassed here. They sieged high ground pre-20 minutes. It was barely just before 20 minutes, but still, regardless. Game two, again, same thing as in the T1 series. It was a little bit closer, but ultimately it just felt like the same game, where Motivate Gaming was just absolutely handling them. And yeah, their cores were playing out of their minds in this series. I have to give the MVP in this one to Gotcha Boy, playing mid for Motivate Gaming. His Ember Spirit in game one was super huge. He was playing with a lot of confidence. He was setting up a lot of really good plays, making nice rotations. And in game two, his Queen of Pain, again, he was playing with so much confidence. He was like just blinking in as Queen of Pain in the early game into like 3 heroes, and he would go in, do a bunch of damage, make it out on like a sliver of HP, and just like hold all of the enemies in that one spot for long enough for his team to come in. I thought Gotcha Boy had a really, really good series here, and he's my MVP here. And again, just more reason why I think Motivate Gaming is going to be one of the top teams in this region. Again, Execration, not exactly the toughest enemy in this region, but Motivate, really no troubles at all with this one. Moving now to Western Europe, we had one series in Western Europe in the upper division. That was Liquid making their debut against Cool Guys. Of course, Liquid with their new roster, Matumamen coming back to the team. We have Zai coming in playing offlane, Boxy moving into the position 4 role as opposed to the position 3 role, and then Meke moving to mid. Of course, I've talked numerous times about how Liquid was one of those teams that usually was pretty flexible with their positions, even before the changes that they made to the roster. It wasn't unusual to see Koikfa in the safe lane. When Sumail even came on their team last year, Koikfa played in the offlane for a little while. And in game 1, similar to the first Western European upper division match that we saw yesterday, Team Liquid drafts a Pudge, same as Team Secret, and they actually made it look really good. They played it offlane as opposed to position 4, which is what Team Secret did. They paired it with an IO, and it was actually quite a scary lane. Like, the amount of regen that this Pudge had very early on, it made him trading with his Rot very effective. Zai looked really impressive. He was hitting a good amount of his hooks, which you always want to see from an offlane Pudge, or from a Pudge in general. And yeah, I gotta say, no one really looked out of place. Like, everyone playing in their new positions looked like it was completely natural for them. Again, Boxy playing position 4 now was huge. Mike, of course, having experience in the mid lane, he had himself quite a good series as well. In game 2, Zai was on the Spirit Breaker core, and again, in lane with Boxy, that lane was deadly. In game 1, it was the Pudge IO. Game 2 was the Spirit Breaker Mirana. And there was just no opportunity for Cool Guys. They were just kind of getting that lane destroyed game after game. Both of these games, again, end up being kind of stompy. Team Liquid wins this one with a total kill score of 59-15 for the series. And the games added up together aren't even an hour long. So, again, just a lot of stomps all around here. Team Liquid looking real good with the roster. Cool Guys, again, not a team that is projected to do super, super well. And they definitely did not show very many signs of life in this series, so they'll have to turn it around for their upcoming series. Luckily for them, they don't end up playing until next week, so they'll have some time to get some practice under their belt. All right, next up, moving to North America for our final 2 matches of the upper division today. Starting off with Undying versus Wildcard Gaming, previously known as D2 Hustlers, a team that had a very, very good season in the lower division last tour. However, heading into this upper division, they lost 4 of their 5 members, and the teammates that they replaced those losses with didn't exactly woe me. They're my bottom projected team for this region right now. They have Sammy Boy playing position 5, who notably he had a pretty rough series. Whether or not him moving from carry to position 5 was like his choice, or if it was a last minute decision to get onto a team really quick, I don't know, but this was notably one of his rougher series. But yeah, what a tough opponent to go against first for Wildcard Gaming, as Undying looks fantastic. They look like they are just as good, if not better, than they were back at TI, which was impressive enough as it is. They had a really, really cool draft on the side of Undying. They had a really nice tempo draft with the Ember Spirit Tree and Beastmaster for a nice early pressure, rotations, and a little tower defense with the Tree and Protector, while also having that late game security of the Morphling for Tomato, which would end up paying off because this game ended up lasting just less than 25 minutes, and he ends up with a Rampage before this game's out. So fantastic game for them. And game 2 was just as clean. They actually finished this one in almost the exact same amount of time, just under 25 minutes. However, they almost doubled their kill score in this one as well. We have Tomato playing his Luna, and it was just a bloodbath of a game, and not the kind that Wildcard was hoping for. I actually don't give my MVP to Tomato. I thought he had a pretty fantastic series. I actually give it to Moon Meander this time. I thought he had a really good series. In game 1, he was playing the Rubik, and Sammy Boy was playing the Bane on the opposite team. He was never able to get any Fiend scripts off. It seems like Moon Meander were always in position to get those stuns, get those lifts, get those spell steals. And then in the second game, when he was playing on that IO, it just looked fantastic. He was always there with the saves at the right times, always amping up the right teammates. I thought Moon Meander played out of his mind in this series. And yeah, rough start for Wildcard Gaming. Not exactly changing my mind about how I felt about them earlier on. And for Undying, again, I projected these guys to be #1 team in this region, and they've given me no reason to doubt that. Next up, and ending our upper division run now, we have 4 Zoomers versus Black and Yellow, which actually is the only series of the day that one wasn't a complete stomp and actually went to all 3 games. So, starting off, we actually have a very, very good start for four Zoomers. They are making some nice early rotations. This was totally an Earth Spirit versus Ember Spirit mid lane. Shaggy playing his Ember Spirit. Anyone who knows him knows he's like an Ember Spammer and Gunner on that Earth Spirit. But yeah, even with these great rotations from four Zoomers early, it's Black and Yellow that has these really, really good early team fight coordinations. They were really, really layering their spells early, and those early team fights ends up being what kind of wins them this game. They kind of snowball that momentum from the early game from those fights. And four Zoomers really doesn't have an entry back into this game, so a clean win for Black and Yellow. And heading into game two, they're looking to close this one out. But that's not quite what happens. Gunner has a fantastic game on his Invoker, making those nice early rotations. It seems like every single time Black and Yellow try to make anything happen on the map, he was just TPing in with this Invoker, and he's playing the Quas Wex, so he was always disrupting the team fights with those tornadoes, those EMPs, those cold snaps, and Moo on his Timbersaw as well. This was a very, very one-sided game, as most good Timbersaw games are. We saw the same thing with kind of OG and Secret yesterday with ATF. It was the same kind of thing. It was just a complete bloodbath on the side of four Zoomers. They won this one 47-8, which is pretty ridiculous. It does take them quite a while to end, but again, they have an Invoker and a Timbersaw on their team, so not the best sieging heroes. But heading into game three, a lot of early back and forth fighting, really entertaining game. But it's four Zoomers that win the crucial team fight around the Roche pit that actually matters, and from there they snowball the game out of control. Four Zoomers win this series 2-1. Honorable mention to Costabile. I thought he had a fantastic series. His Terrorblade game in the game that they lost, I thought he was pretty good. He actually had an insane amount of farm considering he was on the losing team. But in game 2 and 3 on his Sven and his PA, like the cameraman wouldn't even be on the Sven, and all of a sudden it would cut back over to him, and he had like a 3-man stun with the Sven, and he was cleaving through the whole enemy team. In the PA game, he went off. But I am going to be giving my MVP to Moo. In game 1 in this Tide Hunter, I thought he was one of the more crucial players on four Zoomers in that loss. In game 2, again, the Timbersaw, he kind of owned. That was a bloodbath on the side of four Zoomers. Definitely couldn't have done it without him. And in game 3 with the Doom, he just looked fantastic, always doing the right target, sometimes even holding the Doom throughout in a very long team fight where the four Zoomers would still win, but just always having the threat of that Doom. So I thought Moo was definitely the MVP of this series, which is always nice to see your newest members on your team getting the MVP. Again, Costabile would have also been one, so for four Zoomers, you're pretty happy with this result. Finally, moving now to our lower division matches, starting off in Southeast Asia, we have Ragdoll versus Army Geniuses. Ragdoll, of course, being one of the teams coming in from these open qualifiers. They actually beat Talon Esports in those first open qualifiers. And yeah, this was another case of a very one-sided series for the side of Ragdolls. GY's Timbersaw had an ultra kill in game 1 very early on into the game. However, the fact that I wouldn't say it was too one-sided. The kill score was actually very even early on into the game. At 28 minutes, the kill score was separated by only one kill. I think it was like 16-17 or something like that. But the net worth lead was 17K for Ragdoll. So it just showed that even though they were trading evenly on a kill score level, the gold level and the fact that they were able to take so much more map control on Ragdolls was really what was propelling this game out of control. And a very good game, very good series all around for Ragdoll. Game 2, they had the Drow Ranger on VT Faded, and he was up against an Ember Spirit, an Earth Spirit, and who are very, very good at jumping and closing the distance on the Drow, which is good for a setup hero, who they also had a Faceless Void and a Tide Hunter. So it seemed like a pretty tough Drow game. I know some people think that, myself included, that Drow was pretty okay against Faceless Void. You know, Faceless Void traditionally doesn't like going up against too many ranged heroes because it's just harder to catch them all clumped together. But regardless of all these counters, he has himself probably the best game he's had in the past little while. VT Faded on that Drow, looked fantastic, and again, this was a very, very well executed game for Ragdoll. My MVP has to go to him. In his game 1 as Terrorblade, he didn't necessarily have too many standout performances in that game 1 on the Terrorblade, but he did what he needed to do to get that win. And all around, fantastic series for Ragdoll. They got themselves up to a 1-0 start on the season. Moving over to Western Europe now, where we have Chicken Fighters versus the Ghost Frogs. And this was, again, a 2-0, but game one was pretty close. Ghost Frogs actually got off to a really, really good start. There was a lot of early fighting in this game. But again, it's just one crucial team fight in the mid game around 28 minutes where the Roche Pit is. And Chicken Fighters wins that one crucial team fight. And that, again, is just what it takes to get this game out of control. Notably, Aqua on his PL just started getting out of control as well. It was a PL versus Terrorblade matchup, which is pretty impossible on the Terrorblade side of things. He ends up with an ultra kill, and again, despite the fact that Ghost Frogs and Mastermind playing his mid Storm Spirit in both games here made some really, really nice early rotations to set this early game up for Ghost Frogs, they just never were really able to capitalize on that enough to actually close games out. So Mastermind, I gotta say, for Ghost Frogs had a fantastic series. As for the rest of the team and the team as a whole, things again started falling apart in the mid game, and the same thing happens in game two. So overall, gotta say, pretty good series for Chicken Fighters. They got some things to work on in the early game, considering they were able to get kind of thrown off quite a bit from Ghost Frogs in that early game. But again, they were able to rally themselves together and break out of that chokehold, and they get themselves a series win. They go up 1-0. I give my MVP to Aqua. Again, his PL in game one. Sure, that matchup, PL versus Terrorblade, is pretty easy. He did pop off too. But in the second game, he played Morphling up against the Terrorblade. And that's not necessarily as easy of a matchup, but he still played fantastic. And so I'm giving Aqua that MVP there. And finally, ending things off again in Western Europe, we have Chillax versus Into the Breach. Into the Breach in this one, I'd say, was probably the more favored team. And yeah, this was game one was the longest game we've had in this DPC so far. It goes just over an hour. It didn't really feel all that close past like the 30-minute mark. At 30 minutes, it was actually quite close. A lot of back and forth trading. No real net worth lead. Again, it was the case of a Terrorblade versus a Naga Siren, so they're farming the map like crazy. The side of the Naga Siren, being Chillax, also had a Zeus on their team, so it seemed like a pretty impossible Terrorblade game. And past that 30-minute mark, the game just kept going, and the net worth lead just kept growing and growing for Chillax. Like, they weren't necessarily taking objectives super quickly because, again, you have a Zeus and a Naga Siren, not exactly the best pushing heroes. But after like 30 minutes of accumulating just kill after kill and net worth lead just increasing and increasing, the game ends up finishing at a 53k net worth lead for Chillax. And yeah, this it seemed like past that 30-minute mark when the game started to go in the side of Chillax, that's kind of when Into the Breach broke, because they never really got back into the series after that point. Again, game one kind of slipped away from them, and then game two was kind of a non-starter for them. They never really got into it. And Chillax, they take this series 2-0. Again, they look pretty good. They had a very, very good draft lineup in both games. So it could just be in the fact that Into the Breach kind of screwed themselves over in the draft. Again, Terrorblade versus Naga Siren and Zeus. You can't exactly let that happen. That's a pretty impossible matchup there. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. MVP for that series, MTD. Thought he played pretty well. In his mid lane, again, his Zeus was really high impact. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow with another review of all the series, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.